Are you seeing more opportunities for digital work, digital world after COVID-19 or even now?
Sure. So let me give you a quick picture of this current situation. Right now, if you look at the numbers, we are undergoing the largest unemployment rate in the history of the world. The last highest unemployment rate was 100 years ago during the Great Depression in 1929. Back then, about 3% of the world's population lost their job. And then the year after, in 1930, we went to 6%, right? And about 2 weeks ago, I think 3% of the world's people lost their job already. And last week, 3% went to 10%. And in the last generation, it took us one year to go from 3% to 6%. In this generation, it took us only 1 week. But I would like to tell the audience today that this crisis is different from the Great Depression or back in 2008. If you look at the Great Depression, that was, the recession might come from the shift in consumer behavior from wartime production to consumer production. But if you look at 2008, that was when banks took excessive risk, and all of a sudden Lehman Brothers went down, and a bunch of people lost their jobs, and that company doesn't exist anymore. People don't go back to the same job that they had. But this crisis is different. We have 30 million people. I think 22 million Americans lost their job in the last 4 weeks. But this crisis is different because these people are working in bars, restaurants, and these companies didn't do anything wrong. They might be a very profitable company, but the reason why these people are getting laid off is because of the shutdown, right? So this is a short-term thing. It's not like the company is no longer there and people cannot get recalled and go back to their work after we fix the biological problem. What I'm trying to tell you here is that currently this is not a economic structural problem like 2008. That's when banks took excessive risk. This is a health crisis followed by a shutdown. And if we get the policies right, these companies will survive, right? The jobs are not permanently displaced. People can go back to where they were working before. But it is very important that we need to deploy the funds quickly from the government, because in the next few months, I think most of the SMEs will run out of cash, and SMEs and small businesses account for majority of our economy, majority of our employment. It was very hard for companies back then it was very easy for government to bail out banks in 2008 because they can, call 25 CEOs into one room and hand them checks. But this time the government needs to bail out companies, small companies and people. It is very hard to get everyone in one room. And without the technological infrastructure, you can see that it is very hard for Thailand to deploy funds effectively. Some people that should deserve the money, that 5,000 baht that they should receive, are complaining that they didn't receive the fund. Some people that didn't really deserve the fund get the money. And the only way the government can bail out SMEs now is to provide loans through commercial banks. But banks cannot deploy these funds within a few weeks because they have to do due diligence in companies. So they must accept this margin of error because we haven't got the technology ready. But with the arrival of digital currencies, governments can deploy funds effectively to bail out people and to bail out majority of the companies. Unlike back in 2008, handling checks to 25 CEOs to bail out banks is easy. But with the cryptocurrency, the government can, sign the stimulus package. I think $2 trillion was signed at the end of March, and 350 billion is being deployed to help SMEs. But that's not enough. We have to deploy them effectively. With the use of Libra or digital currencies, government can, deploy funds directly to those really in need, and to filter out those that can stay put, to make sure that SMEs have a runway long enough for us to address these biological or health issues. I think this would be a V-shaped recovery because even though economy is about 50% larger than in 2008. The US government is printing out a lot of money right now, way more than 2008. And once we discover the vaccination or address this biological issue, there's nothing wrong with the structural economic issue. And there are more cash in our economy now. I think the economy will take off, because these people can get back to their jobs right away if the government can protect the SMEs just long enough so that we can discover the vaccines, right? And if you see in Thailand right now, the SMEs are trying to stay survive by doing digital transformation, by bringing in tools to help them change their business model quickly to connect, to spot new consumption trends of customers, to cut cost, unnecessary costs in Thailand.
Yes, and Kun Jirayut, you just mentioned that you can see how many companies are trying to having new strategy to work online more. What about your company? I suppose that it's very high-tech company already. What have you adjusted in terms of working from home or the connection with your staff?
Sure. So with the arrival of this COVID crisis, you can see right away that companies with digital strategies are getting no effect compared to companies with zero digital strategy. For our company, we didn't get affected at all by this COVID crisis because our business model is fully digital. Or even the way we work, we deployed 30 different applications to make sure that our employees can work online. We've been using this for over 2 or 3 years now. We've been doing training for 2 or 3 years. So with this COVID crisis, we have been working from home for almost 3 months now, and we get no affected, zero, affected on. We didn't get any affected, impact on COVID in terms of operation or business model. So I think it is very important going forward for companies to have digital strategies. But in the short term, I think it is very important for governments to bail out, not at the banks level this time, but to make sure that SMEs who didn't do anything wrong, it's just because of the shutdown. The company might already be very profitable to survive, to make sure that our supply chain is not interrupted in the short term and people can get back to work. But I think post-COVID, it is the company's responsibility now to train the employees to have digital strategy at a company's level to adjust, to adapt to the new economy very quickly. Because in some other industry, it will change their industry forever. For example, right now people are getting used to ordering food delivery online. And if this crisis is prolonged more than 30 days, it will become the new habits of the consumers. And companies need to adjust to spot new consumption habits in order to survive. So they must have delivery or digital strategy to make sure that they can cope with the new economy post-COVID. I think Alibaba came to light after this SARS crisis. Back then, the e-commerce took off in China afterwards. So I think with this COVID crisis and this short-term shutdown events happening in Thailand, it will also change the consumption pattern of some of the industry. And I think it is very important that companies have digital strategy to make sure that they can cope with the new economy.
Yeah. Jirayut, I think we all believe that what is happening is a wake-up call for everyone. And of course, everybody is starting to say that we cannot go back to the same old world again. And we have to thank digital technology for saving us during these days. But as far as the government is concerned, we know that the Prayut government has this Thailand 4.0 strategy. But what is happening now certainly has forced us to take another look at this strategy. What would be your advice to the government if they want to pursue this digital technology? Yeah.
Sure. I think the statistics is quite scary because the world is moving in an exponential manner. We're not moving in a linear manner anymore. And with the exponential, development, everything is moving super fast. If you look at the few statistics, solar panel, the cost of producing electricity through solar panel has gone down 250 times in the last 40 years. Or the wind power energy has gone down by 25 times in the last 40 years. Or even the phone that I'm using for this interview now has more computing power than back then when we used to send a man to the moon, right? And the average S&P 500 companies back then, before the internet century, during the industrial revolution era, was 75 years. That was the average lifespan of a company in the stock exchange. Currently, the average lifespan for S&P 500 companies is down to only 7%. Sorry, or only 7 years. 7 years. That's the average lifespan. The world is moving at a much faster rate right now, and about 97% of the CEOs around the world know that their industry is going to change forever, but only 3% has this digital transformation strategy for their company. But more than 54%, that's more than half of the existing companies, have no clue what to do, what to go forward, what to have, have zero digital strategy for their company. And this is very, dangerous, because in the future, most of the GDP, all the, economic activities will be online. Thailand is a very small country. We have a population of about 70 million people, right? But if you look at this year, I think more than almost 5 billion people will get access to the internet. If the government has this digital strategy, we can, sell our services and goods and products to the rest of the world. That's, the market size would be much larger than 70 million people. Because everyone has internet access, and mobile phone penetration is also very high. I think in Thailand, mobile phone penetration is around 144%, meaning that for every one Thai person, we have an average of 1.4 phones. We are a mobile-driven economy, and the internet access is great. I think the infrastructure is already, we are already in a much better position compared to Philippines or Indonesia in this region. But it is very important for the government to educate the workforce, because the skill sets is no longer relevant in this internet century versus the industrial revolution era. We need to change the way we work. We need to change the way we think to be able to cope with this exponential development world.
And Kun Jirayut, what's the advice do you like to have for young students, university students this year? Perhaps they must be quite frustrated to see the situation right now, and must be wondering what the skill they should have to survive in this COVID-19 crisis and for their future employment. What's your recommendation?
Sure. Personally, I am very positive with the post-COVID economy, because this is not a structural economic issue like 2008. The economy was functioning well, but this is a biological or health issues, and followed by the shutdown, meaning that if the government got the policies right, by making sure that most of the SMEs, small companies, can stay alive long enough until we discover the vaccines or address this biological problem, the world can get back on its feet very quickly, right? And even though the economy is 50% larger than in 2008 crisis, the government is printing out way more money. I think Germany is, putting in almost 20% of their GDP to aid, to inject new capital into the economy. That's already double the size of the US economy. And I think Thailand is, if you look at the debt to GDP ratio for Thailand, we are not doing that bad compared to the US or the European countries. The debt to GDP ratio for Thailand is great. We are a very, healthy country. I think the government can borrow more money to make sure that, we can feed and make sure that SMEs, which is 90% of our economy, can survive long enough for the economy to get back on its feet. And the government is the shareholder of every companies in Thailand because we're paying 20% tax. If we need their job is to make sure that companies can survive, so they can pay taxes, and we can then pay back our debt in a healthy manner. It is better to borrow money now. And with the new post-COVID, if we can make sure that these companies survive, and with the amount of money injected to our economy, I think it would be like a rocket ship. There'll be growth opportunities in everywhere, just like post 2008 crisis, but much more, because much more money is being injected compared to the last 10 years ago. I would advise the youngsters to make sure that you go into the sunrise industry. Don't go into a sunset industry. Make sure you learn new skills. With the arrival of 5G technology, like with the arrival of 5G data, it will unlock new wave of technology like blockchain, AI, big data, and it is very important that the youngsters learn new skills, because existing skills there are a lot of people who know how to do those jobs well already. It is better to open up new industries and learn new skill sets. But unfortunately, these skill sets cannot be taught at universities, because even the universities are lacking behind in terms of educating the workforce to train the workforce with relevant skill sets. So I think it is a lifelong learning process that everyone must continuously learn and improve themselves. The internet is a great place to learn new skills and discover new community, new opportunities. I think it's very important to learn new skills and to go for this sunrise industry like blockchain, big data, peer-to-peer lending, IoT.
We certainly need a rethinking for the education system.
Yes, I think even the universities are getting disrupted. If you look in the last 5 years, I think more than 500 universities in the US was shut down because there are less students going to take courses right now. And with this COVID crisis, you can see that a lot of universities in Thailand are pushing out online courses, and the courses are getting shorter and shorter with more relevant skill sets for the workforce. So the universities are also adapting themselves to make sure that what they're teaching their students are relevant to the industry, to the workforce, and to catch up with the knowledge on the internet or on Google.